So today's presenter, Dr. Arinola Dada, who is wonderful. I met her a couple of months ago. You can tell just from her big smile that she is just joy and a ball of just great energy, positivity, and just a real expert in her field. Board certified rheumatologist at Overlake Center up in Bellevue. Active leader in several professional organizations, also a dedicated mother, teacher, mentor, and frequent speaker. And you have a TEDx talk. You've got this big red X that I sometimes see in your background in your home office. So I know you're not there, but that is a very cool thing. We also will have later on, Dr. Dada will be in conversation with Gary Ho and Wilson Du. And so they will share their stories, and we're very excited to hear from them and how gout has affected their lives. So now I will hand it back over to Dr. Dada to do your presentation, and then you can follow that up with a conversation with Gary and Wilson. Thank you and welcome.
Okay, thank you, everybody. I'm going to share my screen. Give me 1 second to make sure that is going to happen as it should. It's not going to be perfect, but you bear with me.
I can see it's coming on.
Perfect. And it's going to go to slideshow.
Yep, we see
And
the
it's going to go from the
slide.
beginning. We're on it.
Yes, presented. Oh,
Okay,
yep.
and I'm going to make everybody small hair. Okay, perfect. We got this going. Okay, thank you so much. I'm going to say specifically to people dealing with gout, concerned about gout, have people that they love dealing with gout, for taking the time to listen. Hopefully, you're either listening live or will do on the rerun. So really, really appreciate your time. And thank you to National Kidney Foundation for making this happen. Gout is such an important topic, and a lot of people are dealing with this silently, and it's time for us to bring this out into the open. So as Doris said, I am Dr. Arinola Dada. I'm a rheumatologist, been practicing for 20 plus years, and I am in Bellevue, Washington State. We have a Facebook page called Gout Support Group, where you will find people that are dealing with gout and how they're managing this. And we have physicians who come on to give you just their little experiences and also advice on how you can live free around food when you're dealing with gout. So hi, everybody. Excited to talk to you. So today we will learn about gout. What is it and why are we talking about it? The myths, facts about gout. We'll talk about target pain versus managing this problem long term, and we'll talk about what's next. Okay, so as always, this is a general talk. It's not intended to provide medical advice. Each individual is special, and so the advice always has to be tailored to that person and their needs and personalized. That's why we want you to talk to your healthcare provider. So whatever we talk about, you take this and talk to your provider so that whatever advice it is can be, make sure it's fashioned and tailored to your own needs. So always important to talk to your provider. Gout. What is this thing called gout? Well, it's a kind of arthritis, and it causes inflammation and pain. I think everybody knows when they hear gout, they kind of have this a little bit of repulsion because there've been a lot of stories about this thing called gout. So the issue is the body is making much more uric acid than it can get rid of. Right? So gout occurs naturally, it's part of the body's process, and it's characterized by that uric acid typically getting into a joint, and usually most people it starts with the foot. So most people with gout will present with pain and swelling. Feels like someone took their foot and smashed it with a hammer, that kind of intense pain, and then it's quiet until somebody comes and smashes the foot with the hammer again. So most people, that's how it starts. And so that's gout, that's the crystals in the joint. And about 75 people who never get their gout treated will now develop more of this chronic, more difficult to deal with gout, where they have this chalk-like substance, sometimes in their feet and hands, elbows, ears, and it looks like chalk under the skin, but it's actually gout crystals. And so 75% of people who they figured out that they can take ibuprofen. When they take ibuprofen, it calms down the pain and then they're fine till the next attack. Also, they think. And then there's uncontrolled gout. So gout that, people, your doctors have tried to treat it. Sometimes they give you medication to try to treat it, and they haven't successfully gotten that uric acid low. So uric acid can go as high as, I've seen as high as 13 milligrams per DL. And we typically, in people with gout, want it low, as low as possible. If you have really bad gout, sometimes we're even looking for the number 5, but 6 is a good number. And Gary, who we're going to talk about later, really has a really good mantra of knowing your numbers. I really love that. And since I spoke to Gary, and you will too enjoy that part, he's going to talk to you about knowing your number. So our number is 6. 6 milligrams per DL is a number that we want our uric acid levels below. So gout can come as episodes, like somebody comes, smash your foot with the hammer, and then comes again, smashes again. Or it can be where it's quiet. You're not having pain, but you're having this continuous deposition of lumps in the skin and in the joints and in the tendons and muscles, which isn't just quiet, it's actually damaging the joints. So we had gout and uncontrolled. So who gets gout? Gout is much more common in men than women. And in both men and women, the chances of gout increase with age. So I'll tell you why women typically don't get gout. 2 major reasons. One, well, maybe 3. One, they're nicer. No, I'm going to ignore that. So one is that we have menstrual periods, and every month we have this menstrual period before menopause where we basically shed uric acid, right? So we shed uric acid, so well, then we're not going to get gout because we're shedding it every month with the menstrual period. But and then the second reason why we tend not to get gout is that the estrogen increases your ability to pee out uric acid faster than someone that doesn't have estrogen. So those are the 2 reasons why, as we women get more mature, and as we hit menopause, well, 2 things happen. We don't have the monthly cycle, so we don't bleed every month anymore. So we're not getting rid of uric acid. And 2, we lose estrogen, which has been increasing our ability to pee out uric acid. So now women and men, start to kind of equalize in the incidence of gout once women don't have their menstrual periods anymore and start to hit menopause. And so with men and women, as we get older, the chance of gout increases with age. And we have found out that genetics plays a huge role in gout. And they actually have identified the genes. So there's one gene called the ABCGE genes. I like whoever named that, very well done. And then there's another family of genes called the SLC family, and there are about 3 different genes that have been identified. So we're getting to where, if you don't get it, is gout is not your fault, right? So we're finding out that there are reasons why people are developing gout, and genetics is a huge part of that. So gout, in addition, has been associated with many other medical issues. So it's now being considered as a cardiac risk factor. So whether we're thinking about metabolic syndrome, just like your doctor talks to you about high blood pressure, heart disease, diabetes, high cholesterol, kidney disease, we're really now thinking that gout may be also a cardiovascular risk factor, because we're finding that people who have all these other metabolic syndrome also have high uric acid levels. Okay, what causes gout? Well, gout is due to the fact that there's just too much uric acid in the body. And like we said, it can be genetics, or, well, how does the body get rid of the uric acid? Kidney disease. If the kidneys are not functional like they should, then there's going to be a backup accumulation of uric acid, which unfortunately does not sit quietly, causes damages in the joint. But interestingly, not all people with high uric acid will develop gout. So you can have high uric acid, but it doesn't get into the joints. So getting into the joints, forming those lumps, damage to the joints, ligaments, and tendons is what gout is. It's not just that, oh, I got my blood test and uric acid was high, so I have gout. It has to be in the joints, in the muscles, tendons, and ligaments. So uric acid can form crystals that develops in joints, and these crystals can cause the pain, the swelling, which is usually what patients feel. But the other thing that us as providers and physicians are concerned about is really the damage that happens when this uric acid quietly and silently sits in the tissues for a long period of time. So uric acid is a natural substance. It's in your body. Like I said, your body is made up of protein. Like we have meat. This is meat, right? So this metabolizes and breaks down protein into purines. And there is a chemical reaction that happens as your body breaks down anything that has DNA or has a nucleus and breaks it down all the way until it forms uric acid. And this uric acid is just not very soluble. So it tends to form crystals, and it's the crystals that damage your joints. Now, although we talked about the fact that genes determine whether or not you have gout and how your body can handle it, we do know that certain foods, so if you, for instance, let's say your uric acid is 8, right? And then you ingest certain foods like beer and alcohol, shellfish rather, red meat, you're dehydrated, you ingest high fructose corn syrup, is so crazy, that is huge. And so if your level is 8 and then you ingest some of these things, like when I worked in the VA, our vets used to go fishing and climbing and used to wash it down with beer, and Monday morning was gout clinic, right? So you're already at the threshold, and then you do something, it could be food, it could be dehydration, it could be high fructose corn, and it just kind of flips you over the edge. So then people say, well, I was fine, and then all of a sudden I had some beer and I had an attack. Well, your uric acid level was already so high that even one bottle of beer could flip you over into where there is this acute attack of gout because there's this acute change. But baseline, you were actually already predisposed to having gout, if that makes sense. Okay, so symptoms of gout. So it's like I said, it's a severe attack, like somebody came, smashed your foot with the hammer. Henry VIII, there are lots of pictures of him, with the king and his regalia, and he's having his foot on the chair, and with people kind of fanning it, like it's so painful. And people can't even bear the touch. It is red, it is hot, it is swollen. I've had patients walk into the office holding their shoe, and I already know the diagnosis is gout. Nothing else makes you do that. You're holding your shoe in one hand and you're like gingerly walking into the office because that foot is so painful, swollen and red that you don't want anything touching, not even the sheets. When a patient tells me that I cannot bear the pain, I cannot even bear the covering of the sheets, we're thinking gout until proven otherwise. So gout can affect the big toe, the ankle, the instep, the heels, the wrist, the finger, the rib cage, the spine, the elbows. And it can build up in vital organs. It can build up in the kidneys, around the heart, and it can build up in the spine. Like I said, there's actually someone, I think there's a report where someone had gone for surgery. They opened him up. They found he had tophi in his spine. They closed it and were like, you need to get treatment medically, not surgically. There's actually episodes of uric acid tophi in the cornea, in the eye. So this can be more than just joint pain. And so after the first attack, about 84% of people are likely to have another attack in 3 years. Gout spectrum. So there are about 9.5 million adults in the United States with gout, and only about 3.2 who are actually getting treated. And then of those, there are people who are poorly controlled, about 1.3 million, and then patients with refractory gout also make the less than 200,000. So patients with chronic tophi and visible tophi, and I explained, tophi is those lumps of uric acid, are up to 41,000, and people are suffering and getting damage to their joints. And sometimes it may take up to 15 years from day one to when the patient, untreated, can have that full form of aggressive gout with tophi. And this is when people sometimes say, I was diagnosed with gout about 5 years ago and I've just had like 2 attacks and nothing really bad. I just take some ibuprofen. That's a story I hear frequently. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, but I'm getting more and more attacks and I'm getting these lumps on my elbows. And this is kind of the natural progression of gout. Maybe more aggressive in some people than others, but people have this period which is called intercritical where it's really quiet and then they have an attack. and it's really quiet, and then they have an attack. And which is why people can have gout for 15 years or longer before it really manifests in the full aggressive form that damages joints. What are tophi? So tophi are these deposits of uric acid, and you find them as lumps under the skin. This is a perfect pictorial example. And you can see them either with your plain eye, like this picture of the gentleman, as well as on the, so people sometimes think it's a bunion. Pretty much happens at that first toe where bunions typically exist. And so the good news, though, is that, ultrasounds can sometimes pick this up, and there are actually scans that are now available that can also pick up just how this tophi that may not be very visible under the skin. So these uric acid crystals like build up anywhere in the body, and damage happens. And this is a perfect picture of the dual energy CT scan. And this shows up, the green areas show the uric acid deposits. And not every center has it, but if your physician has access, this is really great because it can tell you how well you're responding to treatment. So in our facility, we love to do the dual energy CT scan because patients can really see the progress. And then, when we talked about the fact that uric acid can damage the joints, this is exactly what it looks like. So this is an x-ray of like the third finger. And these little holes in here, in radiology, we call this the rat bite appearance. Looks like a rat took a bite. And that is a characteristic picture of a patient with gout. So in rheumatology, when we as physicians are looking at x-rays, it's really a pattern recognition. So we're looking at the pattern to see, hey, if there is any evidence of like this rat bite appearance, we can say this is not just gout, it's erosive gout, it's damaging gout, and this is the kind of gout we want to prevent. So common myths about gout. So we have the myth. I think most people feel that diet is to blame for chronic gout. And the fact is that only a third of the uric acid in your body comes from what you eat. So either your body produces too much of it or you can't get rid of it because, like we said, your body is muscle. So your body metabolizes, cells are always turning over. So your food contributes just a portion of what your blood uric acid looks like. The second thing is gout can only be harmful during a flare. I would say most patients are only thinking about their gout when they're having an attack. Or oh, this thing is back. I thought I beat it. Well, they didn't beat it. They were just in that quiet intercritical period. And so the fact is that even when everything is quiet, the uric acid continues to build up, continues to damage ligaments, tendons, joints, even when it's quiet. So we want to try to prevent that from happening. And then another myth is that gout is only a joint disease and causes pain in the big toe. And I think when people have that mentality, then it's fine, just my big toe, The problem is that it's not just your big toe, it's multiple other joints can get damaged. And it's not just a joint problem, it's not just a ligament problem, it's not just a tendon problem. It's that gout has been found to be part of the metabolic syndrome and can also increase the risk for cardiovascular disease. So it's associated with a variety of health problems throughout your body, including your heart and the blood vessels. Myths. All gout medicines work the same way. No. There are two different types of medicines for gout. There is one is if you are having pain, how do we stop the pain? So one is anti-inflammatory. So I tell my patients when you come in, first problem, are you having pain? If you are in pain, let us get rid of this pain. So we stop the pain. There are multiple ways in which we do this and get you pain-free. Number one. Then when you're not having pain, you can either listen to everything else I have to say about how we're going to manage this long term, right? Then the second thing is medications that lower the uric acid. And they do this in different ways. So two different things. Get rid of pain with the anti-inflammatory medicine, and they're not just, ibuprofen and stuff. They're different medications that deal with the inflammation because the inflammation is triggered by the crystals. So you have these uric acid crystals and they don't belong in your joint, right? So anytime there's movement of uric acid, when uric acid crystals move, your body senses that why are there crystals here? Why are they moving? And your body sends white blood cells, which is the military. Your body's military, and it sends it to the crystals, and the crystals try to engulf this uric acid. The white cells try to engulf this uric acid crystal, pardon me. And so when the white cells, your white blood cell count, which is your military, your body's soldiers, when they try to engulf this uric acid that doesn't belong in the joint, well, they kind of choke on it and they can't really get rid of it. So they send for reinforcements. And send for reinforcements, you have more white cells coming. So that is that I feel a tingle in my toe to wow, this is a full-blown attack. That is your white cells sending for more reinforcements to get more white cells in there because they're trying to get rid of these crystals, but they are not capable of doing it. So that is your attack. And that is why we use an anti-inflammatory medication. I compare it to a fire hose. We come in and get rid of all the white cells. We haven't touched the crystals. We just got rid of the white cells that was causing the inflammation, that was preventing your sheets from touching your toe and preventing you from walking into the office with your shoe on. We just got rid of inflammation, but we haven't gotten rid of the uric acid. So that's when the second medication option comes in, which is how do we lower the uric acid? And those are urate lowering therapy. So I hope it's clear. Medications to get rid of pain, and then how do we lower uric acid? How do we prevent attacks? How do we prevent damage? Those are two different conversations. Second is myth is I can control my diet, my gout through diet alone. Diet does not account for the whole picture in patients with gout. And in fact, people that were put in studies where they were only allowed kind of like low purine diets were only able to reduce their uric acid level by 10%. So for instance, let's say a person has a uric acid of 8 and they're able to lower the uric acid by 10%. Now their uric acid is 7.2. But remember, our magic number is 6. So even just lowering it by 10% in a very strict kind of in a clinical trial kind of environment doesn't really allow you to get your uric acid sustainably, right? And we know that a lot of it is genetics. So it's only a matter of time before the genes kind of kick in and even that 10% starts to get whittled down. So diet does not alone cannot manage gout, but if you're already prone to flares, then I would say that yes, we want to make sure that we're minimizing your exposure to those foods and like high fructose corn syrup drinks, beer, that can increase the likelihood that you're going to get more attacks, especially when things are not well controlled. Something is happening. It's not trying to move. Let's see. It looks like my screen got stuck. Hold on a second.
It's like it's trying to forward, Dr. Dada.
Sure, let me see. I can move it myself. Not letting me do that either. Interesting. Give me 1 second. Let me stop my share and maybe just reboot it. Sorry.
Let me know if you want me to put up the slides.
I'm just gonna get rid of it and maybe just go back.
The tech gods always have something new to surprise us with.
Let me see. I'm just gonna reload it. I'm not sure why it froze, but I'm just gonna go back and get it.
Well, let me know when it's reloading and you have a minute or so while it reloads. We do have some questions that I can ask. It's in the chat.
I can also share the deck, Dr. Dada.
Okay. I reloaded it. I just want to make sure that it's working again.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, let me go past. I may need you to share the deck because I'm not sure why it's
Okay.
not going. I just reloaded it.
Happy to. Hang on one sec.
Interesting.
Now mine's lagging too. Isn't that funny? Dr. Dada, why don't you answer a question while I figure this out?
Okay. Oh yeah. Let me
Okay.
let me
Yeah,
find.
yeah, Patty can figure that out. But we do have a couple of questions in the chat. Any long-term effects from long-term use of allopurinol?
Allopurinol.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So good question. So allopurinol is a medication that's used to block uric acid production. And so along the chain, as purines are getting broken down, allopurinol prevents that final change. So it's able to prevent that crystal formation. And so there is an adverse effect where people can get like a very difficult to treat skin rash called a hypersensitivity reaction. And so we can do a genetic test to test and see if you are likely to develop that issue. So there's something called an HLA-B5801, and there's a genetic test that we can do to identify people who are at high risk for developing allopurinol induced reaction. So that should be easy to identify. Usually people of Asian descent, but because our genes have been so mixed up over time, even African Americans, so we typically just run it on everybody because if we can prevent a reaction in one person, it makes a big deal. In addition, your doctor will be ordering blood tests or full blood counts, liver tests, just to make sure that you're not at risk for any issues with your white count going down or liver test. But as long as your doctor is monitoring, you should be able to tolerate allopurinol. I mean, we've had people on allopurinol for decades and who have done very well on that medication. It's an oldie but a goodie.
Yeah. And a follow-up question, somebody asked, I'm taking allopurinol 100 milligrams. Will I have to take it for the rest of my life? He's 77.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's more of a question for his own provider, but do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that people always get concerned about taking medications for the rest of their life, and I totally understand that concern. But in this situation, if we understand that it is our genes that is predisposing us to maintain, to kind of keeping the uric acid instead of getting rid of it, well, the genes are not going to change. And so if you've been able to get your uric acid less than 5 with medication, especially a low dose like 100 milligrams, then I think that the benefits are better than the risks. And what it also does is give you freedom around food, avoiding ER visits. So the short answer is yes, at least until we find something better. And so there's so much going on in science, so many clinical trials going on that I always tell my patients these days, there's no forever. It's until the next best thing comes along. But yes, for right now, yes, allopurinol is an amazing medication, does wonders. And as long as you're being monitored by your doctor, we should not have any issues that you should be concerned about. And usually it does mean being on the medication long term.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. There are a lot of questions, but let's proceed with the slides and then we'll come back to
Okay.
the questions
Okay.
more. And a reminder, any unanswered question will be answered following the webinar.
Okay. So yes, we can go to the next slide. Thanks. Okay. So 1 in 4 people with moderate to severe kidney disease also have gout. And as we understand, we talked about the fact that it has to kind of go through the kidneys. And so if there's too much uric acid building up, it can become chronic and it can be difficult to control. So these uric acids, as we said, can build up in different parts of the body, but the kidneys are not spared. And the kidneys, in addition, it's almost like a double function. Your kidneys have to get rid of the uric acid functionally, but they can also be the target. Like the uric acid can also clog up the kidneys, and so that the kidneys can't function too. So they're almost like a double whammy. But not, and then so one of the ways I like to explain what we now know about gout in people, gout specifically when it comes to the kidneys, is that we think about the kidneys like under the microscope, the kidney really looks like a funnel, and then there's a garden hose attached to it. And so with the funnel, the body kind of drops all the things it doesn't want, kind of, all the things it wants to pee out. It pours it in the funnel, and along this garden hose, two things can happen. And you can imagine like it's a porous garden hose. So your body can take out things that it wants. So let's say it says, you know what, I need a little more sodium, a little more potassium. Your body can take it out. Or your body can say, hey, you know what, we have too much water. Let's put water in the filter. So everything in the garden hose is going to go all the way into your bladder and get peed out. People with gout, we found out that the genes makes it more likely that instead of the uric acid staying inside the hose, your body, because of those genes, actually pulling that uric acid back in the body. And it's like, well, thank you very much. We don't need this uric acid, but this is what the body is doing. So the body is going, after you've already filtered, it goes and it pulls it back into the system, like it has an affinity for it. And so we found out that there are these genes that actually cause the body and cause the kidneys to do this. And then, of course, when you're working with your kidney specialist and your rheumatologist, they're going to let you know there's some medications that are ideal for people who are dealing with kidney disease, and there's some medications that are not ideal. And between the two of them, we can usually work out what medications will be appropriate for our patients. And, we do know that there's some medications, like everything. We talked about genes, we've talked about food, and there are some medications that are known to make people have more gout or cause attacks of gout. So just as we talked about the shellfish and the bear, it would be remiss for us not to talk about the fact that there's some medications like diuretics, specifically water pills, specifically hydrochlorothiazide. If you already have gout, that can make it more likely that your body will retain uric acid. So some diuretics, water pills, and some beta blockers can be some of those medications that can trigger gout in people who already are prone to gout. Next slide, please. So we want to know the goals of treatment. And, like our good friend Gary says, is we want to keep that number less than 6, knowing your number. So that number is less than 6. And now that number less than 6, we can minimize attacks and symptoms, and we can help to get your tophi towards resolution, and more importantly, prevent joint damage from gout. So when the uric acid level is 5 or less, then it's less likely that we're dealing with gout and gout attacks. So most human beings will have their uric acid sometimes 4 to 6, but once you start getting to 7 milligrams per DL and above, that's when uric acid starts to build up. And so people who are running uric acids of 10, 11, 12, they are at high risk for that uric acid to eventually damage joints. So we mentioned that we have the acute treatment, which is you're having pain, gets you pain-free. And then it's how do we prevent the next attack? How do we prevent you from ending in the ER? And so the next one is more the maintenance treatment and how we eventually get that uric acid less than 6, because we want to resolve all those tophi. Next slide, please. Okay. So how do I know that my gout is uncontrolled? Well, it's possible that the pills that your doctor is giving you are not effective, right? Or they're not just getting you to where you need to be. So it's uncontrolled if you're still having attacks. If you're having more than one attack of gout per year, or the gout attacks are getting more and more difficult to treat, or if you find that you have these lumps, women tend to have these lumps of tophi more in their hands, or if your elbows or knees or around the ears. If you're having more of those lumps of tophi, then you know that your gout is uncontrolled. Or even in between attacks, which can happen. So people typically think, well, I'm having a gout attack, I'm just going to get rid of that pain and I'm fine. But there are other people, over time, it becomes more of a chronic, well, yes, during the attack, their pain may be 10 out of 10. And when they're not having attacks, their pain can now be 3, 4, 5 out of 10 chronically. So people who are having ongoing pain suggest that we really don't have this gout under control. So having that conversation with your doctor about the impact of the gout pain on your life helps your doctor to kind of prioritize it. Because if you come in and you say, I had a gout attack like a few years ago, I'm fine, then your doctor is going to focus on other things. Well, let's talk about your cholesterol, let's talk about your screening, colonoscopy, all this other stuff. But if you bring it to the spot and saying, hey, I'm still having residual pain from gout, I think your doctor will more likely kind of put some weight to that so that you're not suffering in silence, which I find a lot of people with gout are doing, unfortunately. Next slide, please. Okay, so gout is the most common form of arthritis in the United States. I gave a whole TED talk on the fact that gout is not our fault. And one of the main reasons why gout has this bad rep, where people feel that, I walked into the patient's room one day and I said, hey, the good news is I found out what's going on with your foot. You have gout. She's like, not gout, anything but gout. I don't want to have gout. It's because it has this historical bad rep. And that is because way back during the times of the pyramids, they figured out people had gout and they were able to make that diagnosis because it's always in the first toe and you have pain and swelling and you can't put on your shoes. So they're like, well, whoever has this is gout. But they didn't know why. They didn't know anything about crystals. They didn't know anything about triggers. They didn't know anything about allopurinol. All they knew is that you have gout and it most likely is your fault. And so there are a lot of stories that have been weaved around it. And so that's why it's been around much longer than we knew anything about science to be able to identify the culprit and to be able to identify the cause. So instead, it has a stigma around it, which is that, oh, well, if only you stop drinking beer, you will not have gout. If only you were more disciplined with your food, you wouldn't have gout. If only you lost weight, you. So there's this stigma that's around gout because we knew of the condition before we ever had any scientific information. So we as human beings are always trying to explain things. That's why we have fairy tales and stuff. And so this is a fairy tale around gout that unfortunately is a stigma that prevents people from getting the care they need. So the goal of uric acid treatment is to get that uric acid less than 6. And so do you know your uric acid level? And if not, it's a simple blood test. So talk to your healthcare provider about the treatment and management of gout. Next slide, please. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. But it's not over. Don't go anywhere. Okay. Thank you so much for listening. And so if you're on Facebook, follow us on our Gout group. We provide a lot of free support for people. We give you the up-to-date things that are happening. We have other physicians that come on and even patients that come on and just tell their story so that you know that you are in community. So I'm going to welcome Gary Ho and Dennis. Thank you. Thank you, Wilson. So great. I'm excited to have these two pioneers that kind of have made so much of an impact based on their stories and have been advocates for people dealing with both gout as well as people who are dealing with gout and kidney disease. Welcome, guys.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful presentation.
Okay, great. So just to kind of let everybody kind of know a little bit about who you both are, Gary, would you mind telling our audience a little bit about who you are and how you got here?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, great presentation, Dr. Dada. Thank you for all that. So my name is Gary. I am the co-founder of the Gout Support Group of America. We are a support group found on Facebook. You can also go to our website. We have loads of resources. We are a patient-led nonprofit strictly for the gout community. And our resources can be found at www.goutsupportgroup.org. So super simple. My story basically is that I lived with gout since I was 24 years old. And so my first gout attack was all the way back in 1994. And at the time, I was just finishing college and I experienced my first painful attack. And for me, it took 16 years before I was able to find a physician that actually would listen to my experience and my pain because I just did not fit what doctors back then believed gout patients looked like. I was deemed too young. So ultimately, it wasn't until 2010. So I lost half of my 20s, all of my 30s. I woke up one morning and I couldn't even recognize myself. I was using crutches, wheelchair at times. Finally, was able to make it into a rheumatologist's office, and I sat there and just for 10 minutes unload on him, just told him my history, told him the first experience of gout, told him how I just felt like I wasn't being heard, told him that my gout attacks would come back. So the pain would go away, but it would come back, and each time it would come back, it would last a little bit longer and be a bit more ferocious, to the point where I was describing the pain to him. I said, Doc, I can sense it when it comes on. When it's about to come on, it's almost like a freight train that's roaring down and you can feel the rumblings of the track, right? And then when it hits, it feels like there's 1,000 tiny people inside my body with pitchforks jabbing their way out, and the pain's relentless. And I remember him saying, Hey, I think you have gout, Gary. And I was kind of like thrilled to hear that, as insane as it might sound. I finally felt that I was heard. I was quickly diagnosed with chronic gout. That opened up the door for me to receive other treatments besides just focusing on mediating the pain, right? And so we might be able to get into this. Dr. Dada alluded to this, but when you live with gout, there's two ways, okay? There's two prongs that you really need to approach gout with. One is dealing with the inflammation or the pain that you're dealing with right then. But even if you don't do anything, that flare will actually go away. But if you actually have gout, it's a lifelong condition. So even if you're not feeling the pain, you still have gout. And so the other prong is to actually understand what I call is knowing your number. You have to know where your uric acid level is. If your uric acid level is over that 6.8 milligrams deciliter on average, 6.8, remember that number, that's basically a saturation point. That's when your uric acid turns into crystals in your body, and they are in shapes of little tiny needles. That's the pain that you're feeling, right? And so it's a two-pronged approach. You have to be proactive with your pain, but also if you forget about the uric acid creating the crystals within your body, you're not treating the cause of gout. You're just putting a Band-Aid over this wound. I hope that makes sense. And the whole reason why I'm here is to offer hope for our gout community. There is hope, you guys. We can live pain-free and we can reclaim our quality of life, period.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much, Gary. I think there's
Absolutely.
nothing like hearing from people who've experienced this, taking their pain and making it meaningful. Really always appreciate hearing kind of your story because that is very inspirational.
Salamat kailan.
So, Wilson, so tell
Yes.
our audience a little bit
Maybe.
about how you got here and a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that, Gary. As listening to you talk just brings a flood back of memories. Thinking about I get the visual and I feel the tingling in my foot and my ankles about having the crutches in the car, all of that, all of those things just brings back a lot of that pain. Dr. Dada, I know we've all got together and spoke in the past, and one of the things that you'd mentioned that really explains so much and is just I've heard it before from you. I heard it again that it is likely many times it's genetic and as gout patients a lot of times we're always looking for the reason. What did I eat yesterday that caused it? But I didn't eat any of that today. Why do I have a gout flare up? And so your presentation, thank you so much for clarifying so much of that. What's going on, everybody? My name is Wilson Dew. I go by the Reno Warrior. I was a dialysis patient for 5.5 years. I'm now a living kidney transplant recipient. Thank you to my wonderful hero, Amy Hewitt of the National Kidney Foundation. All of my whole journey with kidney failure, with going through all the pain in dialysis, and even in the whole beginnings process of getting into dialysis and after dialysis, there was a big tale about gout. I did not read a lot of the signs. And, one of the very first signs for me, looking back now in retrospect, should have been the gout. I was diagnosed in June of 2016. Years leading up to that, I was having gout flare-ups. At the time, I just thought maybe I hit my leg somewhere, which I knew I didn't. But we look for explanations to fill in the gaps. And I would say I can't remember exactly, but I would say maybe like three years prior to my kidney failure diagnosis, I was probably having one flare up a year, every 8 months, something to that effect. And then year two, it was maybe a little bit more frequent, maybe a couple of times every 6 months, and or once every 6 months, and then it really got aggressive. It was once every maybe 3 months, and then once every 2 months, and then once every 1 month, and then once every 2 weeks, and then well, it got to a point where it was like, all right, one side is done. Now he jumps over to the other side, and you can't catch a break. And without the medication, I remember I could take a lot of pain, and I
Mm,
was just thinking, you have to appreciate how much pain your body can take. And I,
mm,
I remember a few times just letting it go. Let's let it take its natural path and see how long it takes. And it was in upwards of 3 weeks before that flare went out. And you get like a day of clearing up, then woo, next day, boom, here you go again. Um, and I did treat it to some degree where I would call the doctor, never getting, to Gary's point, never really getting that official diagnosis of gout, just trying to manage the pain. And that was really the whole thing with just managing the pain. And it wasn't until one day where I woke up and the pain was bad. It was not only in my toes, both my toes, it was both my ankles, both my knees, to the point where I couldn't even walk. I couldn't get out of bed and grabbed the phone, called 911, like, you guys help me out. It's gout. I'm pretty sure it's gout. Come get me. They came, they got me, took me to the hospital. What I was expecting was, all right, let's go into that cortisone shot or whatever to take away the pain. And indeed, they did that in the ER, but that's where I learned for the first time. Doctor came and said, "Tell me about your end stage renal disease. Tell me about your kidney failure." And at that moment, kidney failure? What are you talking about? I had no idea that I had this. And I had all of the signs leading up to it that I should have gotten it diagnosed. I should have went in there, got whatever test that needed to be taken, and maybe I would have found that prior to having just straight onto dialysis. Well, long story short, a few months later, crashed into dialysis. Started if any of you don't know what dialysis is, I mean, your kidneys don't work. They start pumping the blood out of you, clean your blood, put it back into your body. Now, that first time that I started dialysis, again, went to the hospital. It was gout. I had a gout inflammation already. And as I was laying down in the hospital bed, as they started dialyzing me, I wake up and now it's gout is just none. I don't know what the dialysis machine did. I don't know, Dr. Dada, if it's coincidence or if it was just a fluke, but my fingers, my elbows, my neck, my back, my knees, my toes, and it got to the point where I was just laying there for weeks on out getting dialysis. I was in so much pain that whole time. They gave me the narcotics to alleviate that pain. I laid in bed for so long. It was several weeks, 6 or 7 weeks or so, nursing home, hospital room, that all my muscles atrophied. I had to learn how to walk again. I had to be transported by a gurney. So talk about the extremes of having crutches and canes in the car before. Now I'm getting transported everywhere in that gurney. So really, gout played a tremendous role in my in my journey through kidney failure. It played a tremendous role in me trying to adhere to a lot of the treatment plans. And once I got officially diagnosed, allopurinol came into play. That managed it quite a bit. And I just remember that first time seeing that rheumatologist. It had been a few years of fighting this excruciating pain where they go, Wilson, we can do this. We can manage this. It was such a relief, and I'm happy to say that I've been flare up free probably for at least I would say 7 or 8 years now. So that's my story in a nutshell with gout, and I'm happy and healthy now. So.
Wow. Thank you, Wilson, for just sharing such a moving story. I would say, this about you, Wilson and Gary. You guys have had such a tremendous kind of life-changing experience with gout and how it impacted you and how you were able to overcome that working with your physicians, not trying to necessarily to do it alone, right? Wilson, I heard you kind of said that you were like, okay, I'm gonna tolerate this pain. I'm just going to see how long this thing's going to last.
Oh, yeah.
And it still lasted 3 weeks. And you're like, okay, fine, this is 3 weeks. And then the next day, boom, right? So I think this is, but then after that, you overcame it, right? So you both overcame such a difficult experience, overcame that, worked with your providers, and now you are advocates. You're telling other people that, hey, it doesn't have to be like that. I was once you, right? And it doesn't have to be like that. And this is how we can move forward. And let's collaborate. And so that you have your partners in health that can help you, guide you towards where there's freedom. You guys are sitting down here, we're laughing. We're not dialing 911 for anybody having pain. We're gotten to where there's freedom around food. So question 4, I'm going to ask Wilson this question first,
Sure.
which is, what do you feel is the benefit of community in a condition like gout, for instance?
I think community support is extremely important. There's probably a reason why I think females live longer than men because we like to keep things inside. I'm not going to go to the hospital unless it's really bad. I'm stubborn with it, and that was me. I was extremely stubborn with it. I thought that I can manage the pain myself. And the worst place to ever look at things to manage your pain is Google and places like that. When really having a community, a support a support group, or just having others that have gone through the same thing and getting from their experience, I think would be a tremendous help because it would avoid so many battles of what caused it, how can I manage it. Man, I just went through this, but why am I going through this again? So it takes a lot of the guesswork out, and so it would have saved me a lot of physical pain, a lot of heartache, and the outcomes might have been different if we would have caught these things earlier. So yes, very important to go out there and get information on it. I tell folks nowadays, advocate for yourself. Something's wrong, go find out what that is because you might be able to catch something early.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Gary, I'm going to have a different question for you. Can you share a little bit about kind of your thoughts about, people are living in fear of their next gout attack, right? And, what strategies or mindset shifts have you seen, because you've interacted with so many people,
right.
or have you yourself used to help people move from fear to like where you guys are, which is a sense of control?
Yeah, that's a great question. I love that question, honestly. I think people living with gout, we're warriors. Honestly, you guys, you cope with more pain than people realize and know. Wilson and I have been there, so we understand that. Also, living with gout can be very isolating. Again, it's just lonely, right? And so you do live in fear. You're living in fear of when that next attack might be. You're living in fear when you're thinking, I'm going to go on vacation, but what if I'm here and, I'm with my family and all, and the attack comes. What do I do? Like fear is our middle name. We understand that, it's our reality. But I'm also going to say this within the Gout community, we've experienced a lot of false hope, right? And so, I'm very skeptical. I've always been skeptical my whole life. So when I hear people, hey, say, do this, take that, and eat cherries, or do, you've heard it. If you have gout, you've heard all the the wise tales of and maybe even your mom. Like my mom would tell me, Gary, you need to eat the darkest of the dark cherries. Like just eat it, consume it, because that's just how it's going, like we have all these ideas. But ultimately, because our body overproduces and under excretes uric acid, because that's how the good Lord created us. It's not our fault. That's just how it is. People don't understand that. And so I'm here to tell you that there is real freedom and there's real hope. So is it possible to move from fear to freedom? I'm here to tell you that it is possible, but you have to be in control of your own life. You have to take, the bulls by the horn, and you need to advocate, like Wilson said, for yourself. You need to know where your uric acid level is. You need to know your number, period. Your body fluctuates every day based on what you eat. So just know on average where you're at. Secondly, do not blame yourself, right? The stigma of gout is that you ate too much, you did this, you did that. The other name for gout is it's a rich man's disease, king's disease, right? Because back in the olden days, it was the rich people, the kings, the kingmakers that were eating the steak and drinking the drinks, right? And the common folk were not. So it was known as the rich man's disease. So the fault, just that stigma still is with us today.
Yeah.
But it's not your fault. Yeah. The good Lord made you this way. We were dealt with cards in life, and these are our cards. So accept it, but also understand that there's no better period to have gout. And this is going to sound weird, but than to have gout in today's time, right now. Because there are so many tools in the toolbox that can help us to manage our uric acid level. Yeah. So when I tell you there's real hope, I am not fluffing. I'm living proof of this. Yeah. From 94 to 2010, it was hell. It was hell. From 2010 and on, I have not had a flare. I eat anything I want in moderation. Who here doesn't love brisket, right? I'm a barbecuer. I have a smoker in the back of my house.
Okay, Gary, people are still dealing with gout. Don't let them start mouth watching. We got to get that number under control.
I say that because I want you to understand that you can live in freedom, right? Once you take a hold and control of your life. So that is the truth, right? So, so hold on to that hope.
Totally agree. I want to give Wilson the opportunity to say, hey, if there was one thing that you could tell people that are dealing with gout right now, a message for a person who's like newly diagnosed with gout that will help that person feel more hopeful and empowered. Do you have maybe one thing you would tell them, kind of a mini you a few decades ago?
Oh, if I knew what I knew now, I'd be simple. I go look for Dr. Dada and go look for Gary. I mean, the what you both came out with today is going to help a lot of folks tremendously. Gary's talk about, there is hope, there is freedom. I think that resonates with so many people, and that is a very big thing. And what he said about not blaming yourself, Dr. Dada, you reinforced that with backed by the medical world, and I think just knowing those two things, I think a lot of people would seek help. I think a lot of people would get that help, and a lot of people would get better sooner and take more control of their life and take more control of their disease.
Yep.
Well, I just want to say again, the truth of the matter is there are not a lot of people out there, Gary and Wilson, who would kind of publicly, just to help other people, tell people their journey, you know. And when we're talking about gout, people have a lot of shame about, but you guys are coming forward and letting people know that there is a way forward. There is freedom around food. There are times when you may even have a smoker in the back of your house grilling brisket like Gary, right? So that there's freedom around food coming, that there is a lot of promise to where you can be gout-free, pain-free, protect your organs, and just really just have to give full appreciation to you guys for not just dealing with this and moving on independently on your own, but also being coming back and giving to our community. So I just want to say a big thank you so very much, Gary and Wilson.
Thank you.
You
Thank
are
you,
fully
Doctor.
appreciated.
This is amazing.
Yes, and
Absolutely.
thank you so much to the three of you. This has just been wonderful. So full of information. We could easily go on, but we don't have the time. But I'm sure we'll find Dr. Dada, because I know you're a frequent speaker, and Gary, your support group, and Wilson, you're always around. Follow him on social media if you aren't already. We will share all of that. Yes, Renal Warrior. If you just Google Renal Warrior, you will easily find lots and lots of posts about Wilson. So thank you all so much. I want to thank our three presenters and all of you for attending today. We will send out the recording to everybody who has registered. Thank you. And we have lots of questions that were not answered. We will get those answered and send that out to you in the follow-up email. Thank you so much, and we will see you next time. Have a
Thank
great day.
you.
Thank you
Bye.
all.
Thank
Bye.
you all.
Appreciate it.
Bye, buddy.